Putin is continuing to advance into Korea.
When did we beat Japan at anything?
To disperse with 30 bullets within half a second. 30 magazine clip in half a second.
Right now, if you Google the word idiot, a picture of Donald Trump comes up. I just did that.
We'll do it live. Fuck it.
Hello and welcome to the Political Circus Weekly Podcast. This is episode number 19 and I am your host, Mike Ursery. I am a news writer for both Being Libertarian and for Think Liberty. You can find my work at beinglibertarian.com. You can also find it at the Think Liberty website, which is www.think-liberty.com. Now, before I jump into this week's episode, first I have an update to make. 2 weeks ago, I did an episode where I did a recap of the Jussie Smollett case. As you remember, he is the Empire actor who faked an attack against himself. He paid two of his friends to attack him at 2 a.m. in Chicago, and he filed a police report saying that he was jumped by two white rednecks who screamed out, "This is MAGA country," and they were wearing MAGA hats, according to the police report. And then we find out later that the whole thing was just a hoax. He made the whole thing up. And the reason for that is because he wanted a raise from his employer, and he wanted to use sympathy to get that raise. Well, on March 8th, that's Friday evening, news came down that a grand jury had indicted Smollett with 16 felony counts of disorderly conduct for filing a false police report. 16. Now, this is only an indictment. It's not a conviction, so we don't know what's going to happen in the future. This still has to go to trial, and he still needs to either be convicted or he could be found not guilty by a jury of his peers. So we really don't know what's in his future, and I don't want to say it's prison, but 16 felony counts, it's probably going to be prison. And all because he wanted a little extra money. In other news this week, daylight savings begins on March 10th. Yes, Saturday night, you're going to lose an hour of sleep, but you get longer days from now until October, and that's nice. You know, you set your clock back an hour. The last Sunday of October is usually when that happens. And it gets dark early. Like, you get home around 5 o'clock in the evening and you feel like the rest of the day is just gone because it's dark outside. But now we're getting to the time of the year where the days are long. It's not getting dark. Usually in the summer, it's about between 7:30 and 8:30. The days are already getting longer. Here where I live, the sun's not going down till about 6:30 p.m. So the days are already getting longer, but now they're going to feel even longer with us springing forward. This is also the time of the year where people have that debate that we have every year this time of the year about whether we even really need to have daylight savings anymore. And there are some states like California last November voted to spring forward and then stay that way, although they need approval from the U.S. Congress to make that happen. Isn't that stupid? That is incredibly dumb. A state wants to adjust time, but they need permission from the federal government to do it. And there are other states who want to do the same thing, and they also will need congressional approval to make that happen. Why don't they just do it? We talk about this every single year, if we even need daylight savings anymore. And the justification for it is that it saves energy, but does it really though? Like, in this digital age where we're constantly using electronics, and you think about what powers those electronics, are we really saving energy? No, I don't think we are. So they should just get the debate over with, do away with daylight savings, get it over with so we can stop talking about it, and we don't have to set our clock back an hour and then only to set it forward an hour later on. But daylight savings is not the theme of this episode. I'm not going to rattle on about daylight savings for 30 minutes, and I know you don't want to listen to me do that for half an hour. what this episode is about, what I'm going to talk about this week is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And yes, I know some people love to talk about her just because of the stuff that she says. People like to laugh about it. Some people are tired of hearing about her. I totally agree with you on that. And, you know, for a lot of us who talk about AOC, it's not that we want to, but we have to, either because of things that she says, or like whenever she introduced the legislation for the Green New Deal, which is insane. Like, we have to talk about these things because of stuff that she says and stuff that she does. And I'm going to make a comparison, and this is a sports comparison. I know not all my listeners are really into sports. I'm not going to go too deep into it here. I'm just doing this now just for the sake of making a comparison. So just bear with me. There is a former NFL quarterback. His name is Ryan Leaf. He was drafted by the San Diego Chargers in 1998, and he is remembered as probably the biggest bust in NFL history. He was drafted number 2 overall behind Peyton Manning. Those who follow football probably remember that Peyton Manning was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in 1998. Ryan Leaf, drafted number 2 overall by the Chargers. He was expected to be one of the next star quarterbacks, and he turned out to be a dud. He was in the NFL for 4 seasons. He only played for 3. He missed 1 whole season because he sat out with injuries. And his career quarterback rating, 50.0, the worst in history. Just to give you an idea of how bad he was, he threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns. He probably, I have to go back and look at the stats, but he probably threw more interceptions than he did completions. That's how bad he was. On top of that, people remember him as a really lousy teammate. His gameplay on the field did not sit well with his teammates. The way he behaved in the locker room did not sit well with his teammates. He used to lash out at the media. There's a video once of him yelling at a San Diego sports reporter saying, "Don't talk to me." This is after a game where he just had a really bad performance. I was doing some reading about him earlier, and there was an instance where he lied about an injury, all because he did not want to practice that week. He wanted to go play golf instead. And he would also blame his teammates for his own miscues. And you think about this, Ryan Leaf, really bad at his job, really bad teammate, blames teammates for his own problems, and lashes out at the media. Okay, now let's look at AOC. Pretty bad at her job, says a lot of off-the-wall things, causing a rift within her own party, lashes out at the media. A lot of times it's conservative media, but there was a time where she went after the Washington Post because they dared to fact-check her on something. And when you look at all these things, you can make the comparison. Folks, AOC is the Ryan Leaf of Congress. I've talked about AOC on this podcast before, but never like this. Usually it's been maybe like individual details. Like, for example, last month I did an episode where I talked about Amazon making the decision to not put a second headquarters in New York City. And she was part of the reason for that. And I also wrote about it. You can find it on beinglibertarian.com. The article is titled "Amazon Breaks Up with New York City on Valentine's Day." And I've talked about her on other episodes before too, but never like this. And what I'm going to do now is, this episode is it's really just all about AOC. First, I want to start off by saying that in the beginning, like in the very beginning, I tried to give her the benefit of a doubt. And this is because her first major interview after winning her Democratic primary, she did this TV news interview, and the person interviewing her had asked her if she would recognize Nancy Pelosi as the leader of the Democratic Party. And she stumbled through her answer. She was saying something like, well, yeah, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Pelosi is the leader of our party, and we we have leadership in the House and we have leadership in the Senate, and like, I try to give her the benefit of the doubt. There are people who dragged her for that. I mean, it's politics, and that was probably her first major introduction to the ugly side of politics, getting dragged for making any kind of mistake. But I didn't do that. I try to look at things from an objective point of view. And the way that I looked at this, she, first of all, was inexperienced. She never held any kind of political office, and she went straight for the U.S. Congress, which is fine. And then she's also young. She's 29 years old, youngest person ever elected to Congress. And I was just thinking that, you know, she's inexperienced. She probably was nervous while doing that interview, and maybe she wasn't expecting that question and just was trying to think really quickly to find any kind of answer. So I try to give her the benefit of a doubt. I don't do that anymore. And she did get thrust into the spotlight pretty quickly. You remember she won the Democratic primary over Joe Crowley. And to this day, I still think that the only reason that she won was because Crowley just didn't try. Crowley was going for his 11th term, and he probably thought that he had his district locked up. All he had to do was just breeze through his primary, and then, well, there's no way the Bronx is going to elect a Republican. So I think he saw this. He had one challenger in this primary. It was a bartender who never held any kind of political office, had no name recognition whatsoever, but she really put herself out there. She went door to door, and she worked, and she did work very hard through that primary. I'll give her that. But I still think that if Crowley had put any kind of effort into that primary, I think that he would still be in Congress right now. So she wins that primary, and you have this person, a millennial, young, ambitious woman, not white. All of a sudden, she becomes the new face of the Democratic Party. And she's also the reason why there is a struggle within the party right now. You still have a lot of moderate Democrats who are center-left and trying to keep the party center-left. But then you also have these Democratic Socialists. AOC is one of those Democratic Socialists, and they are trying to push the party further to the left. But that interview was, I guess you can call it her first major blunder. I really don't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, she did give an incoherent response, but like it really, people were dragging her for that, but I really didn't see a reason for it. But from there, things got worse. She started making more gaffes and saying more ridiculous things. One of those things was the time that she talked about, she was making a video for something called Justice Democrats, and she was saying that the Democratic Party needed to take back the 3 chambers of government, the House, the Senate, and the White House. Really? Come on. The House and the Senate are one branch. That's a pretty easy thing to recognize. That's also a 5th grade civics question. And then there was the whole thing with her talking about the Pentagon spending $21 trillion. This starts with an article for The Nation by a professor at Michigan State University named Mark Skidmore. And he was talking about accounting errors at the Pentagon that amount to $21 trillion. Now, he wasn't saying that the Pentagon misspent $21 trillion, but AOC still used this to try to make a case for Medicare for All. Medicare for All is expected to cost $32 trillion over 10 years, and she puts out this tweet talking about how $21 trillion at the Pentagon could not be traced, documented, or explained. Those were the exact words in the article. And then she goes on to say that Medicare for All costs $32 trillion, so therefore 66% of Medicare for All could have been funded by the Pentagon. No, that's not what he was saying. He was just saying that there were accounting errors that amounted to $21 trillion. I mean, there are some things that were double counted, some things that were triple counted. Look, according to PolitiFact, from 1998 to 2015, the Pentagon had spent $8.5 trillion. Since 1940, the Pentagon had spent $17.8 trillion. And going back before 1940, I don't know what the exact amount was that they spent, but I don't think it amounts to $21 trillion. In the entire history of this nation, the Pentagon has not spent that much money. And yes, I know the Pentagon was not here from the very beginning, but you should still see my point here. And then there was the interview on 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper, where he had asked her about making that comment, and she tried to defend herself by saying that there are people who are more concerned with being factually correct than being morally right. What? People had a heyday with that one. And then there was the time where she was talking about the unemployment rate, and she was saying that the reason the unemployment rate was so low is because people are working 2 jobs, and also because people are working 60, 70, and 80 hours a week and still can't feed their family. Okay, look, when you're whenever you're calculating the unemployment rate, you are not counting the number of jobs, you're counting the number of people working. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are 146 million people working in the United States. Even if you were going to try to make an argument that unemployment rate is low because people are working 2 jobs, the number of people who are working 2 jobs, 7 million. 7 million out of those 146 million, 5% of the people working in the country are working 2 jobs. And as for the other half of that comment about the 60, 70, 80 hours, yeah, there are people who do work a lot of hours in this country, but the average number of hours worked, again, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 34 and a half hours per week. She was way off base with that one. And then there was Amazon. More specifically, comments that she made after Amazon announced that they were not going to put a second headquarters in Long Island City in Queens. And Amazon was supposed to bring an estimated 25,000 jobs to that area. I'm sure you remember all of this if you were following that story. If not, like I said, you can find it on beinglibertarian.com, the article that I wrote. Somebody had asked her about those jobs not being there, and her response was that she said that they were going to subsidize those 25,000 jobs. No, they were not. Look, okay, Amazon was going to get a $3 billion tax break in exchange for bringing all these jobs and bringing the second headquarters to New York City. They were going to get a $3 billion tax break. A $3 billion tax break is not the same as a $3 billion subsidy. And this is what I have trouble understanding. She earned an economics degree from Boston University. You're going to tell me that someone who graduated from one of the most prestigious universities in the country does not understand the difference between a tax break and a subsidy. And then she said, we can put that $3 billion into our crumbling infrastructure. No, that $3 billion does not exist. It doesn't exist because Amazon pulled out of their agreement with the city. Unbelievable. And then there was that FAQ that she published online that explained the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal was her first major piece of legislation, and it was botched. There was one thing that people really had fun with. There was one line in the FAQ that said that one goal of the Green New Deal was to provide economic security for those who are unable and unwilling to work. And shortly after, they tried to do damage control. One of her advisors went on Fox News and said that that document was doctored and that she had never proposed any such policy. And then afterwards, she had said that the webpage that people were reading was authentic, but that was a draft that was published by mistake. She also said that there were doctored versions circulating online. Do you know what those doctored versions actually were? They were pieces of satire that people made because they were making fun of this big piece of legislation that was being unveiled. So as you can see, AOC has had her fair share of follies in a short period of time. And not only that, but also she has become a meme. Yes, she is now a meme, and there is an endless supply of meme material because of things that she says and things that she does. And aside from being libertarian and Think Liberty, I'm also a member of a separate entity called Sarcasm and Liberty. We're a small team over there, but we've managed to build a pretty good following. And one thing that we do is we make a lot of memes that make fun of AOC, but then again, we make fun of everybody. That is a big part of our brand. So we recently hit 7,000 likes on Facebook. And in the beginning, the following was mainly just other libertarians. But since then, we started to get a little bit more name recognition, and our following has increased. We have people on the right who are following us, and also progressives are starting to find our page. And with that, we're getting some angry reacts on our AOC memes. We're also getting angry reacts on our Trump memes because we also make memes that make fun of Donald Trump, and people on the right see it, don't like it, and they give it an angry react. Or they leave a comment letting us know that they don't like it. But, you know, there was one day where I was looking at it, and there was one AOC meme that had one angry react on it. So I didn't think anything of it. But then we started to put more up, and we started to see more and more angry reacts. And then last week I thought of something. I went to the others and I said, okay, I have a proposal. Every time someone angry reacts an AOC meme, a new one goes up. And the others agreed that that would be a good idea and said that she provides an endless supply of meme material. So that is what we're doing now. But here lately, it isn't just follies, jokes, and memes that she's having to worry about. Now she's having to worry about ethics violations. The most recent one was in the later part of this past week. The Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, a conservative watchdog group, had filed a complaint because she was putting actual house footage on social media, which is against the rules. The complaint is that she is using taxpayer-funded resources for the solicitation of contributions and other campaign activities. And what she has also done is she has linked her official house page to her political Instagram account. And another house ethics rule is that official social media accounts may not be used for campaigns. House ethics rules state that broadcast coverage and recordings of House floor proceedings may not be used for any political purpose. So there's one that she's facing. Last week, some news came out, and this one is a lot worse. And this one centers around both her and her chief of staff, Saikat Chakrabarty. And what's being alleged here is that Chakrabarty set up two political action committees, and he had allegedly smuggled $885,000 from these two political action committees to two companies that he owns. On top of that, she is listed as a governor of one of those political action committees called Justice Democrats. And Chakrabarty was moving money from both of these PACs to two companies that he owns. One is called Brand New Congress, LLC, and one is called Brand New Campaign, LLC. So here's the thing with that. PACs have to report all of their significant expenditures. And I was reading about all of this from an article by the Daily Caller that was talking about this. Companies do not have to report all of their significant expenditures. So right off the bat, this seems pretty shady. The reasoning that they gave for why they transferred money from the PACs to the LLCs is because it was for strategic consulting. But look, okay, so he owns both of those PACs, and then he also owns both of those companies. Why would he have one organization that he owns consult another organization that he owns? That doesn't make any sense. So the Daily Caller in this article cites the FEC complaint, and they point out that it's not illegal to move money from PACs to LLCs the way that Chakrabarty did, but the complaint alleges that this was done in a manner to illegally dodge detailed legal reporting expenditures of the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971, which are designed to track campaign expenditures. So because LLCs don't have to disclose all of their significant expenditures, now we don't know what that money was spent on. But why? Why would they need to do that? Why leave it at strategic consulting and offer no explanation of what that strategic consulting was, and then just be so secretive about it like that? Like, where did that money go? What was it used for? And why don't you want people to know? On top of that, Chakrabarty is her chief of staff, and his annual salary is $80,000. And, that's okay. So she wants to pay him $80,000. That's her business. However, when you look at it like this, the average annual salary for a congressional chief of staff, $145,000. On top of that, there is a House rule that says that anyone making more than $126,000 has to disclose all sources of income. This includes paid trips and gifts. Now, if she wants to pay him $80,000 annually, I mean, you can make the argument that that's between him and her, and maybe that's the salary that they agreed upon. And looking at it at face value, yeah, you can certainly make that argument. But when you have this other thing going on, now you wonder why, if he is trying to be secretive and if she is giving him that ability. And, one of the biggest issues that she wants to address while in Congress is campaign finance reform. And she was in a video that went viral where she was at a House Oversight Committee meeting where she was talking about dark money. And, even if they didn't do anything illegal here, still, if she is so concerned about dark money but has this going on, that's a really bad look. But I'm sure an investigation will be done about this to find out exactly what it is. And because of the manner of how this was done and the amount of money, the Daily Caller reported that Chakrabarty and AOC both could face heavy fines, and they could also receive some prison time. So here lately, she's been giving off this signal that she thinks she's above the law. Oh, and she also thinks she's the boss. She was speaking in Queens, and she was talking about people who were criticizing her Green New Deal. And she was basically saying to them, if you think you have a better solution, then you try it. Until then, I'm the boss. Okay, first of all, you're only there to represent your district. Second of all, you've been in Congress for like 2 months. You're not the boss of anything. If you were in the military, if she were in the military, people would be calling her a boot. That's the name given to new people. Whenever someone checks into their first duty station, it wasn't that long ago that they were in boot camp, so they get called boots. If she were in the military right now, she would be getting called a boot. And one last piece of news. I'm not going to really get into any details about Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota. She's another freshman Democrat. She made some comments last week about Israel and about AIPAC, and she was accused of being anti-Semitic. But Fox News reported today that AOC announced that she was going to be raising money for herself, Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, another freshman Democrat, because AIPAC was going to make attacks against all three of them. And they're going to be raising money to defend themselves. I don't really know why they would need to raise money for that. The only logical explanation here is that they are politicians, and the number one job of politicians is to find reasons to need money. If at any time you thought their number one job was to serve the public, you have not been paying attention. No, their number one job is to serve themselves and find reasons to need money. That is all I have for this week. I will be back with a new episode next week talking about the next Circus act. Hopefully not talking about AOC, but I hope you tune in next week to find out just what that is. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but we'll know soon enough. Thank you for listening, and I will see you all again back here next week.
thing sucks.